I don't know what else you're gonna do unless you need to. Okay.
So this time I'm live streaming it to our group because we haven't been able to get the recordings posted. And this should save that in the Facebook, I believe.
Okay.
I think.
I see the live on Facebook, so Facebook doesn't delete anything.
That's what I figured.
Even when you delete yourself, they still keep archives of everybody. So
yes, they do. I'm gonna check in the group, see if it's actually working. It is.
okay.
Cool. I know we have like 3 or 4 more people who are registered.
And then when they pop in, they'll pop in. And if they don't, they can catch the rewind.
Yeah. So let's welcome Stefan. Stefan joined from the Black Lives Matter group here in Baton Rouge.
Okay.
Hi.
Well, welcome, Stefan.
All right. Hi. And my wife Aki is here. I hope I registered on the behalf of the two of us.
Absolutely. Yes, the more the merrier for sure. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. And that was that the South Baton Rouge or?
It's kind of south. It's called the Top Neighborhood. It's right next to South on South 15th Street.
Yeah, but were you in the Black Lives Matter or the Black Lives Matter South Baton Rouge group?
Oh my goodness. I'm pretty sure it's Baton Rouge.
Okay.
I don't know if it's, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
That's what I was forgetting. My wife has asked me, what did you hear about this? I'm like, I don't know. Something's going on. I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, our group, just to let you know, is called the White Support for the Black Cause, and we hold 3, sometimes 4 discussions every month. We do a book club, film discussion. We'll have a class like Antonio is hosting tonight. And like we also host a Know Your Rights class as well on how to interact with police to protect yourselves in court. It doesn't de-escalate violence, but it does protect yourself in court, especially if you're going to protest and things like that. Super important to know what's going on. We also, this month, we have a healing class which is being hosted by the founder of the Assisi House here in Baton Rouge. Her name is Dr. Leslie Taylor Grover, and she specializes in narrative medicine. And so the narrative medicine is for all the healing that we need to take during this time for all of us who are doing this work to heal around the social injustices in our participation in white supremacy. So that is, she's holding it for 2 days, but 1 day in our group on Sunday. And if you can't do Sunday, she has 4 sessions open on Saturday, which I can also, send you that info as well.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Grover.
Yeah. Okay. So it was Dr. Leslie Grover.
Leslie Taylor Grover.
Taylor Grover. Okay. Awesome.
Now, I need to share something from the screen, so I may need you to unlock the screen so I can share screen.
Now, let's see, how do I do that?
On the bottom, it says share screen. It's participants, chat, share screen, record, reactions. Or it's probably in the settings.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Sorry. All right. I've also put you as the host, so you should have all controls as well.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, did it work?
Did. Hi.
Oh, hi. That was really weird. It made me do all sorts of stuff, and I was just about ready to give up, and I went back to the original link, clicked on it, and it let me in the normal way.
All right.
Well, I wanted to avoid that flasher that we had last time.
I didn't see that. I missed a flasher.
That's what I told her.
Yeah, well, I didn't.
You didn't.
No.
Oh,
No.
Yeah, I missed that one.
No.
Okay, well, I'm going to mute myself for now because it is that time of day and I have to do actual work.
I love your dedication. You're so amazing that you show up all the time, even when you're working. Thank you.
I try. It's important to me. So, and it's really slow here at work. So,
well, that's good then. We help the time go by.
Right?
And this time, just to let you know, this is being streamed live to the group.
Oh, very cool.
Because we haven't had the opportunity or the ability to get the old videos uploaded. So I figured if I live stream it, there it is for everybody to see.
That is super cool. I'm glad we can do that.
Me too. That's why I stuck with Zoom, because it's interfaced with Facebook. So
makes sense.
Well, Antonio, we've given people time.
All right. Fair enough. Thanks everybody for attending this Zoom. First of all, thanks for taking the time to come in. Today we're going to have a hard conversation on one of the third rails of conversation: racism, politics, and religion.
Woo.
Yeah. This Zoom meeting, if for anything else, if it gives some open dialogue and some frank assessments, I consider this a success. Okay. Now, in the back of me, I have a little picture of that religion, racism. If you see that eye, that's the intersection where we're at. And you can literally see where you're at.
Yeah.
And I'm going to connect the dots on how all of this comes into play. Okay. We all know about the 1619 and the slaves coming over from history. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit and start putting some players into play. Okay. First guy I'm going to put into play is a guy by the name of John Newton. And John Newton, I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he came up with the hymn Amazing Grace. And when he came up with Amazing Grace, the backstory behind that was he was a slave trader. Came in the Navy, was a slave trader. He got captured. And when he got captured, he was a slave himself. And he came up with that anthem of Amazing Grace. It was written in 1772. It was published in 1779. So technically around the time that we founded this country, 1776, somewhere around there. So that has a little bit of significance. So we're going to go back to the slaves and how they were portrayed. They were portrayed like they didn't have any souls. So slave traders just figured them as cattle, commodity, had no souls. So they treated them unjustly. And by doing that, they justified a white savior to save them from themselves. That was the first person. The second person I want to bring into play is a guy by the name of James Henry Thornwell. And his significance was he was a major American Presbyterian preacher who supported the Confederacy, and after he was a preacher, he became a president of a university. So the South Carolina College. And whatever he said pretty much was considered gospel. And what he did was he taught his form of biblical scriptures to justify inhumane behavior. And when I say that, I'm talking about these. This is just 4 of them, but Colossians, Ephesians, Timothy, where it says, slaves, respect your masters. And this is what they use to justify putting in harsh behavior and obedience.
Were you trying to share your screen at this time?
I was.
Okay, because we're not seeing anything.
Okay. I tried to share this. Do you see anything on the screen?
No.
Okay. Well, it was a few biblical scriptures that I had found, and they were 1 Peter 2:18, 1 Timothy, 3 Colossians, 4 Colossians, Ephesians, and Titus. So if you Google slavery biblical, it's going to give you some of those references. Now, with that being said, they also had a point where if you were a preacher and you're supposed to love God, all God's creatures, there was something called cognitive dissonance, where there's a disconnect between what you're taught, what you believe, and what you act upon. And that cognitive dissonance is exactly that disconnect. So they were justifying bad behavior with the Bible, but they knew what they were doing was wrong. So, and cognitive dissonance is a mental conflict occurs when the beliefs are contradicted by new information. This conflict activates area of the brain involved in personal identity and emotional response to threats. The brain's alarms goes off when a person feels threatened on a deeply personal, emotional level, causing them to shut down and disregard any rational evidence that contradicts what they previously regarded as the truth.
No, we're not seeing any of that today with all the sarcasm I can muster.
Right? Right? Nowhere.
Nowhere.
So it comes to the point where they were justifying bad behavior. They knew it was wrong, and they had this cognitive dissonance. And the way that Thornwell framed this, he framed this as a North versus South, good versus bad. And back then, the Republicans were the good guys. They're the ones that really want to free the slaves and do something. So if you were called a Republican back then, you were evil because you were trying to do what was right. The North, the Republicans and everybody up north that had slaves, they treated them a little more humane than the Southern because they had industry and manufacturing up there. So the whole thing with Thornwell was he wanted to keep that status quo, because if the North found out, if the Southern slaves found out what was going on in the North, they'd have a revolt and their labor would be gone. So the name of the game was keep preaching that slavery, keep preaching that to keep the slaves in line. And as a supporter of the Confederacy, he thought he had a moral right to do those and justify that behavior. Now, during the course of Thornwell, we had the manifest destiny. And the manifest destiny was the white man's burden to civilize the rest of everybody else. Anybody not white, they had to civilize them. That was their moral obligation. And slaves were just caught in that mix. And that was going from the east all the way west, from coast to coast. So there was no state that was untouched, unvarnished. The outward expansion of slavery, when they were going from east to west, they had something called the Great Awakening in the 1790s. And that's where they had the revivals, where all these preachers and different folks of all classes, they'd come in and they go to revival, Kentucky, Tennessee, and that's where the religions all came together and had these revivals. Presbyterians, Methodists, Baptists. So right then and there, it was ingrained in the religion because they were all reading from the same script. But they had a crux. If they were preaching this and the preacher says, hey, this is wrong, they had a good chance that they were going to disconnect from the white economic and political players who served as their deacons, elders, school teachers, and anybody else that they dealt with. So they kept that intact all the way. And if you were against it, you weren't considered a Christian. So if you didn't believe what they were doing was right, you were going to hell. If you did what you did, you had a feeling you were going to hell anyway, but that disconnect, that dissonance came into play, which is still continuing to this day. The Presbyterians was under Thornwell. And at the time, it was one of the main, outside of Christianity, that was the main branch of it. The Baptists weren't as powerful as Presbyterian. So what he was preaching was like wildfire. And it went, again, to every state. So that Bible was weaponized to justify the brutality and abuse. Can anybody in the panel, anybody in the room, remember going to church and seeing a separation at all? This is an open question.
You mean the separation on the races?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'm lived in Panama City, Florida my entire life, and my parents went to mostly Baptist churches, although when I got a little older, like middle school, high school, they were going to what was called a non-denominational Christian church. I don't ever remember seeing a Black person in any of those churches, ever. And in our town, there are, I think most Black people attend like AME churches. It's more, you know, there's definitely Black churches and there's white churches, and there's very little mixing. It's a little bit better now, but well, I don't go to church anymore, but I think it's a little better, but for the most part, there's still that separation. You know, my husband's been to a couple of Black churches for funerals for people in the Black community, and he's like, I was one of the few white people there even for that sort of thing. So there's still very, very little mixing in the church community, at least in my area.
Now, I wasn't raised Christian. However, my mother comes from a Southern Baptist upbringing. When I was brought up, I was told to go look for what was right for me when I started asking questions about God.
That's awesome.
When I was growing up, though, I went to all my friends' different churches. I went to, the Jewish communities. I went to the Catholic communities, Baha'i, Muslim, everything. And still, within all of those that I got to experience, there was no Black people. There was always this separation and even here in Baton Rouge, Leslie Taylor Grover, she's a board member of the Unitarian Church here in Baton Rouge. She's the one who convinced me after 25 years of never stepping foot into a church again to just come check it out, We do a lot of the social justice work here in Baton Rouge. Just come check it out. And I love it there. And there's still a very small proportion of Black to white parishioners at the Unitarian Church.
Do you think that's fear from the Black community that they're going to be met with discrimination and racism in a mostly white congregation? Or do you think it's just ingrained at this point that Black people go here and white people go there?
I think personally for me, it's a combination of many things. I think we have, you know, and I know Antonia is going to speak on this, but you know, from my perspective in education, we have even a huge amount of the participation in racism in the Black community via the church system. And I think that has a huge part to do with it, not just the segregation, but the mentality that the communities, both Black and white, are brought up in Christianity.
Yeah, I was actually raised Baha'i. I heard you say that. So, but I was in my 30s when I found out that there were Black and white churches. It was when there was a spate of church burnings, and I was reading this, and I'm like, wait, what do you mean Black churches? And then I looked into it. I realized, what? Okay, so anyways, now of course we moved out here from California a year ago. And
From California. I've only been here a year.
Okay, what? Same here. Okay, we came from Sacramento.
Me too.
Uh-oh. Okay, We'll have to talk. Sorry.
We'll have to talk.
So, yeah. But so, yeah, it's just, I you know, Sunday morning, most segregated time of the week.
Yeah, most segregated day of the week is Sunday.
Yeah.
Segregated hours of the week. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Even our like after church around here, I don't know if this happens everywhere because I've never been anywhere else, but after church around here, people go out to eat a lot. Well, maybe not now with COVID, but that was like the thing: go to church and then you go out to eat. And even the restaurants are that way, where people go after church. The white people mostly go to like Red Lobster or, ironically enough, Cracker Barrel, but and then the Black people were the ones like, yeah, I know it's kind of funny, Cracker Barrel, but anyway.
Well, no, the reason why that's funny is because Black people couldn't eat at Cracker Barrel until what, the 80s, early 80s?
To the 80s.
Yeah, in the early 80s.
No effing way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, that totally changes if I ever want to eat there again. But no, it's just cracked me up because crackers, you know. But no, even in where you went to eat in Panama City, that was a thing. Like, you just didn't mix even after church. You know, the Black people, I don't honestly know where they ate because we didn't go there. But there was even difference there, I guess. Well, I think a lot of our Black churches did potlucks, which I think is a lot more awesome than going to pay some restaurant. You know, it's kind of funny, this is a side note, but a lot of the churches my parents went to, and I went with them, would say, you know, you shouldn't work on Sunday, but then we'd go to a restaurant, thereby forcing people to work on Sunday. I thought it was a little hypocritical. So I think a lot of our Black churches did potlucks and actually kept that community atmosphere going. I don't think a lot of them went, but I think some of them did go to like the Dairy Queen that was nearby. A bunch of the churches that they went to were near a Dairy Queen. But no, we didn't even mix after church that day. It was like, no, we're just going to hang out with our own people. Thank you.
So the original slaves, when they came over, had their own spiritualities and had their own different beliefs. Yeah. But once it was beaten out of them and then bled out of them through the bloodlines, they were forced to adapt Christianity under death. And then what happens was, after some of them learned how to read and write, the Bible was literally it. It was like a word from God, so they didn't go against it. And for good measure, what they did was they put a white Jesus as their savior, as the image. And they kept that image perpetuated to this day. Everybody acknowledges that Africa is the cradle of civilization. And for the person to be a savior with the features that he has is an impossibility. It even says the description in there. So once they had the image ingrained in their head, they ingrained that to their family. And as far as the Black church, they had to find a way to branch off from their own. So they came up with African Methodists, and the segregation is the most segregated hours during the week is that time. Some of it is due to fear, some of it is comfort, some of it is a mixture of both. But what's happening is if it's one God, supposedly, everybody's supposed to be going to wherever they feel the message leads them. But again, the messages is all different. It's not one concise message. So people go where they're comfortable at. We talk about the redlining in the 60s. We talk about the discrimination and pocketing people in certain areas, and churches are where they're at. If you go to a Black neighborhood, you'll see two things. You'll see a church, and within a few feet, maybe a half a block, you see a liquor store.
Sure.
You'll see.
And none of them Black owned. Like
Exactly. You'll see liquor advertisement. You'll see cigarettes. So they keep that ingrained in there. But if you go to a white neighborhood, you won't see that.
And here in Baton Rouge, you will not see a hospital.
Wow.
There's no hospital in North Baton Rouge, which is the predominantly Black portion of Baton Rouge. Just FYI.
We have a hospital nearby some of the Black areas, but I think it's because it was originally built as a government subsidized hospital. So maybe they were, unfortunately, the Blacker neighborhoods in our area at least tend to be the poorer neighborhoods as well. And so maybe they were just trying to be close to their clientele. Maybe it was cheap property and they could build the hospital there, but it's not really in those neighborhoods. They would still have to put forth a lot of effort to get there, but it's closer. But same thing here. Now we do have some liquor stores in the poorer parts of town that are a little more mixed racially anyway. Blacks and whites and Hispanics and whatever. It's just socioeconomic. But no, now in a middle class neighborhood or like an upper middle class or higher than that, no, there's no liquor store. You're not.
Well, one of the points I really want to make, and I don't want to gloss over the fact here that in Baton Rouge and having a little bit of an understanding, and I know this is not the only city in the nation that has it set up this way, where we have all these, not only are you going to have the liquor stores and tons of fast food restaurants, no access to healthy food. Okay, now we don't have a hospital in North Baton Rouge. There used to be one years ago, and it shut down. Okay, so it takes on average at least 20 minutes from anybody in North Baton Rouge to get to the hospital in South Baton Rouge. Now, when it comes to the Black community in the North Baton Rouge, and we're talking about like heart disease, diabetes, strokes, any kind of natural occurrence, 1 out of every 8 Black person who gets transported from the north to the south dies.
Is that just because of the time it takes? Well, I know there are other factors. You can't unravel everything.
There are, but this is just travel time factors since there is lack of care in North Baton Rouge. They had set up a very horrible, here's an emergency room, and this emergency room does not have trauma care. And so imagine we have a ton of shootings in North Baton Rouge. It's gotten really bad over the past few weeks. So this is why you're also seeing even more deaths when it comes to violent crimes in the Black community, because they can't get care. You can get your alcohol, you can get your cigarettes, you can get your McDonald's, you can get your church's chicken, but you can't get medical care.
Well, and even if not just violent death, but just injuries, I'm thinking here we've had a lot of injuries from hurricane recovery where somebody falls off a roof or, cuts their hand off with their saw or something crazy. 20 minutes, you're gone. There's no way.
Yeah.
And to tie all of that in, when we go to the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, there was something called the evangelical right. And what they did was they turned around and they spoke for the masses, the white masses. So if they were like anti-abortion, anything that had a hospital with abortion in there, They cut it out. Now, irregardless if it's a trauma center
Mm-hmm.
or it needed other services, they were supposedly the final word of morality, and they shut things down. So again, when you turn all of this in, they weaponizing the Bible and religion for their own means.
That's interesting that you say that. The hospital I was referring to that's in the poorer section of town that used to be government subsidized has now been taken over by a Catholic. It's Ascension. I don't know if they have that everywhere, but they've been taken over by a Catholic group. And the Catholic group that took over will no longer pay for birth control on the employee the hospital supported employee insurance, because that's against what they believe religiously.
And again, they can be going there for prenatal care, but they lump it all in together. So, throughout the centuries, it's still showing up, just different forms, different names. And then, like you said, people are going in, and the people are like, I don't want to do this because it's my faith that says I can't issue this, which again, people's lives are in balance. If you have two people that's gay and they want to get married, they stop it, morale. Hey, my faith says I can't marry you because of this. That's supremacy. Mm-hmm. One and done.
Yeah.
So the liquor stores, the hospital, all that ties in together. From people who have a slant and a view and a prism that is so one-sided. Now, we have Agent Orange in right now, and he's a bull in a China factory. Whereas everything we're talking about, he's amping it up 1,000. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Beyond.
The Bible has been weaponized to the point where the word love should be just taken out of there, because the people who say they read it are showing everything but that.
And there's literally no circulation of a Bible that wasn't translated by a white man in existence.
Well, the original Bible was written by King James, and King James back then was writing it for the Europeans that was there. King James was a homosexual, and he was not the normal man, but he wrote to appease the people that was there. He also wrote a book about demonology that nobody wants to talk about. So he played both sides.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. So he played both sides of the coin to get coined, to get paid. And the Bible, they say it's not for private interpretation, but it's always a white person's interpretation that rules everybody else's. But like they say, to the victor goes the spoils, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are the person that conquers everything, then you're going to write the history or your story to justify whatever you're trying to do. And religion is just one form of that weaponization.
And it's so interesting to witness that in the South. As I'm sure you guys can attest to over here from California, it's like there's a lack of participation from Black community to fight for their rights down here. And my involvement and participation and study of it has kind of shown me that the one thing that's in common is their Christianity, and how it really has kept not just racism and white supremacy, they keep it under the rug here. You know, it's there. You can see the lump under the rug, but we don't talk about it. And it definitely has kept the Black people in line.
So,
for lack of better word.
So I was going to bring that up further down.
Oh,
But
sorry.
no. You put me in
Jumping
a
ahead.
perfect segue for it. It's called the forgiveness factor, where you turn the other cheek and keep turning the other cheek. You get two cheeks, then you get cheeks on your butt. Left cheek, right cheek, cheek on your face, left, right, and then you keep coming back. And all that does is it keeps the oppressors oppressed. If you rise up against something and they feel slighted, the oppressors are going to feel slighted because they can't oppress anymore. The oppressed are going to be like, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm not going to do this. I forgive you. I forgive you. You go back to the case of the cop who shot the guy in his own apartment. What's the three things that happened? The judge, she turned around and she was real nonchalant and real peaceful. The bailiff was combing her hair, and the family was forgiving before the even thing came out.
And hugged her.
Right. So
would you consider this a part of that the post-slave syndrome?
Absolutely.
Which is our book discussion for next month. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. That one. Yeah.
That one right there. That's exactly what it is. Absolutely. And it's coming again with Kamala Harris's pick as the VP. Post syndrome for real. She did her job. She put bad people away. And now she's being penalized for putting bad people away. Voting against their own best.
She's being penalized for not just putting bad people away, but following the letter of the law as a DA.
Right.
And if anybody looks at her career, you can see how she's gotten more progressive and lenient, like in regards to marijuana charges and things like that, right? Instead of sending people away for years and years and years. What I find most interesting about Kamala Harris, correct me if I'm wrong here, but is colorism not just exploding right now?
Oh,
in
absolutely.
regards to Kamala Harris and not being Black enough. And I'm seeing the Black community calling her half white, and she's not white at all. But because she's light skinned, here's this, so she's half white. That's why it's acceptable to have her as VP.
It's sexism, misogyny, colorism, all balled up.
Yeah.
All balled up. Absolutely. The post syndrome, the forgiveness factor, all coming into play. And then what happens? They'll go back and they'll pray to a blue-eyed, blonde-haired Jesus, and the same things are going to keep going on. And the politicians and everybody's playing on that. They're playing on the Black folks and their faith initiative. They're playing on the victim. They know what the victimhood is. And that's why they're terrified on Agent Orange getting out of there, because it's not going to be this way. This is not the generation of lay down and be peaceful.
No.
And a lot of people are seeing that religion is not what it's cracked up to be. They see that it's the opiate of the masses to keep people in control. You got atheists, agnostics, you got people that don't even go to church because the message is muddled and they see the atrocities. You don't see any of the preachers out there, Black Lives Matter, protesting. They say it's because the government says they can't protest, but they can't protest in the pulpit, but they can do their own thing on the street. So they are curtailed and put in a box where they had to serve their own masters, so to speak. Funding or whatever they got going on will be taken away. So from the powers that be at the top, they keep them in line. And by keeping the preachers in line, they keep the masses in line. And if they keep the masses in line, Washington won't burn, because they know this is a powder keg right now. They know it's a powder keg. Cali, major powder keg. People are leaving in droves. They're leaving because of the economics. They're leaving because of everything that's going on over there.
This is my dear friend, Miss Tracy.
Hello, Trace. Thanks for joining the party.
Thank you.
And if you don't mind, Tracy, since we are having the discussion of white supremacy and Christianity, so Tracy was raised Catholic here in the South. You're originally from Georgia, and she's here in Baton Rouge. So this would be a great brain to pick, Antonio.
Oh yeah. So,
Put you on the hot seat, Mama. Happy birthday. Love you.
Thank you. I've learned a lot in my 54 years. I was raised with grandparents that were very racist and told me that if I ever married a black guy, I would not be welcome in their house anymore. It was crazy.
did you have any black friends?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tons.
Okay.
Really do. I know everyone says, oh, I got lots of, but no, I really, really do. And, but Olivia's taught me a lot too. Gave me a lot of food for thought to think about.
Yeah, Tracy is one of the most loving, incredible people who is really opening up to learning and understanding her participation and how we all participate as white people in racism, knowingly and unknowingly. And it's a beautiful journey to watch.
I've been watching y'all on Facebook, and then I just realized how I could join y'all. So.
So Antonio, you talked about the preachers keeping the masses in line, but I also see it the other way around too. I think some preachers are afraid to say or do much in the community because they're also afraid of what their congregation would say about that. You know, they might lose their position as the pastor or whatever, because if they speak out too much and then the people that are attending their church don't like what they have to say, then, you know, they're going to say, oh, well, we don't like you as the preacher anymore. You need to get out of here. And I think that works to keep the preachers, quote, in line too. Even if they do think, oh, maybe this isn't right, I need to branch out and speak up and stuff. At least I've seen some of that. You know, they're very careful what they say and do because they don't want to tick off the people that are coming to church every Sunday and paying their salary, basically. You know.
You mean they don't want to cross that white solidarity?
Exactly. It's. I mean, it does go both ways. Definitely, the preacher keeps the congregation in a certain spot, but I think it's the other way around as well.
So what it boils down to, again, it's about control and about narrative. The perspective and the narratives is everything. The preachers back in the 60s, they were willing to stick their neck out because they had nothing to lose.
Right.
And their congregation was going to follow them because they were literally going to lead their people out of the pit. So now you have the preachers they're not collecting money. They're not doing anything. So right now, the reckoning that we have in America, all the preachers should be saying something, because if they, again, teach the message of love and God's creatures, there's no way you're going to see somebody getting shot and murdered and you're not going to try to help. And
Right.
Collectively, America is being murdered in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This is not even up for discussion. So the preachers, they may not march with people. Okay, I get that. But they can say some words to be like, hey, this is the time to make that change. So the preachers have power. If they don't want to use it, that's negligence. Pure negligence.
Now I know
Again,
that Unitarian does. The Unitarian.
Again, they don't have to go out there and protest and march,
Right.
but they got tweets. If Agent Orange could tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning with some madness, these preachers can tweet and do some other things during normal working hours.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What church are you with, Antonio?
I'm not in church.
Oh, but you with a church, a certain church?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm a firm believer that churches and religion is an opiate of the masses. I do believe in God, but I don't need to sit in somebody's church to get a message from God.
Right.
I agree.
Absolutely.
And since everybody's on their own thing, when we were made, we had a message. We have a direct line. We don't need an operator to go in between.
Right? Yes. No operator needed.
No
I love
operator needed.
it. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
For you, Antonio, how do you grapple with Christianity, the Bible?
So Christianity, so the Bible, it says in the preface that it was written by man, inspired by God. So if you got 5 people in line and you tell one person a guy in a red suit is going to be on a blue corner, by the time it gets to the 5th person, it's been so transliterated, which is in the Bible, that the message is all construed. Now it's good for inspiration, but as far as the intent, everybody has a way of taking the intent and changing it to their own narrative. So it has contradictions in it because people read it literally when it's supposed to be written figuratively. The person in the Bible, Jesus, you ask him a question, is the sky blue? No, he never gave a straight answer. It was always in allegories. And allegories means that your husband can read the same biblical verse or ask him a question. He's going to get a different meaning than what you say. So the Bible in and of itself is good inspiration stories. Christianity, I think, is the most evil thing going. Because again, you don't need an intercessor to speak to your creator.
Well, especially how it's been used globally for oppression of many people.
Right.
Many people. And then, you know, and because they were able to successfully oppress many people before coming here, it was already just set up perfectly to use for the enslavement of the African peoples. They'd already practiced it. Yeah.
And
It's an excuse for a lot of crappy people to act in crappy ways and say, but God says it's great. I don't know what your problem is.
And back to the question about the Bible, every religion has a holy script, holy book. The Catholics, the Christians, the Jews, everybody has a holy book that, again, is for private interpretation.
And they all have a similar virgin birth story, death story, and rebirth story.
And back to your question about the Bible and religion, everybody's on a path. It's like a mountain. Everybody's on a path, a journey. The paths are all different, but the destination's all the same. Each one of them tells a story of good and bad, a virgin birth, et cetera, et cetera. And it's up to the people to take the message and be inspired to do good things, not to weaponize it to justify bad behavior.
You know, if you really want an alternative look to a lot of what the scripture can potentially mean, there is a great documentary out there called Zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And Zeitgeist breaks down how all of these religions have the same exact stories and what it means astrologically. And so it can really take you out of this, you know, fantastical story that's presented for the masses to consume and give you more of a mathematical perspective and take you out of kind of what we've all been fed throughout our lives.
Joseph Campbell is an interesting person to read too. Joseph Campbell is a mythologist. He studied mythology, and he talks in several of his texts about how all these different religions have similar stories. So that's another place to go if you're interested in learning more about that.
Awesome.
And when you see that everybody acknowledges that the cradle of civilization was Africa, the first religion over there was not Christianity. It wasn't Catholicism. It was Islam. It was the Moors, that they took all of their endeavors, everything that they created, they stole and took credit for. Geography, geometry, and all of that. So their religion was totally based on something, yeah, was based on something totally different.
I wanted to ask the question because I've been doing my own research, and um, I learned about at least Western part of Africa having this cosmology type of belief. There's the God, and it has the message of everything that exists in this world. It's of God. It belongs to God, the universe, the creator, right? So anything that happens to any member of that universe, so to speak, is going to affect the rest of it, kind of like a butterfly effect.
Mhm.
And I know what happened. Christianity was instilled in them. It was like squeezed out of them, bled out. You said, I like that expression, by the way. And they adopted Christianity. And yes, I think that they have their particular way of interpreting the Bible, such as, I mean, not a part of the Bible, but blue-eyed, white-skinned Jesus. That's not a thing. They think they believe that that's a false figure. That's one of the examples of different interpretation. But I'm just having a hard time um, understanding um, this idea of God juxtaposed against that like West African notion of cosmology, the notion of God. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
You do. You do.
okay.
So I think we can all agree that we didn't just have a Big Bang theory and things just happened. Some things science just cannot explain. So we didn't create this. And even the Bible says that man was created on the sixth day. And why was that? Because if he was created on the first day, by the sixth day, he would have said, look what me and God created. So even man was put in his place. So that being said, there is a creator. Different name, but there's a creator. And if all we know is what we've learned from somebody of all they knew, right now, this is the best time in history because we got Google, Bing. We can search for things. We can find out for our own understanding. We don't have to listen to somebody say, hey, this is what God is, or this is where this came from. You can search like Alice in the rabbit hole. You can go down that rabbit hole and you can get, the further you go, the further you'll find. And the more you search, the more you find, and the more you find, the better you get.
Yeah.
Because once you listen to somebody else's spin, they control your destiny.
Yeah, there's like some really interesting things, because coming from a long line of like druidism and paganism and basically multiple deities, and searching out meanings of words and things like that. And what I always found like really interesting when having conversations with people who are extremely Christian or deep in their religion, and like going back to the original meanings of words, like the original meaning of the word
etymology.
Yeah. And the original meaning of the word virgin was a sacred priestess, a sacred whore, a sacred prostitute. So if you take the original meaning of the word virgin as the sacred prostitute, you even look at the Virgin Mary in a completely different light. If you look at the word whore, and the original meaning of the word whore was a holy hole. It was not the derogatory meanings that we have on them in today's society.
I got one for you too. If you look up the word fornicate, the root word on that is fornix. And when you look at the word fornix, it's the architecture in a corner. So it's like this. It's the bridge between these two. And if you look up the word fornix, you also have that in your brain. It separates your left side from your right side. So the etymology on the words will give you, like you said, a different meaning on that.
Like even the word sin, the original meaning is to miss the mark. And so how Christianity has used the word sin to breed fear and punishment into the masses, when really all it literally means is you missed the mark.
And the word fornicate, if you break it down to this elemental, means you separate it from God. Not so much sex, but you separate. And when you look up the word fornix, it'll show you the separation.
I probably would have gotten in trouble, but before coming out here, I taught in a Catholic school for 11 years. There was one year where I decided we go to mass every week, and these seventh graders sit there and they don't even bother because they can't understand and they can't read who they're reading stuff, and I don't know. So I taught computers. I had computer class with seventh grade before mass on Fridays, and I put up on the screen the readings for the mass. I said, listen, this is what you guys are going to be reading. Let's read it and let's discuss it. And we would do that every Friday. And the changes were amazing. Within a year, the seventh grade started, they were all kneeling when they were supposed to kneel as Catholics. You know, they have their your drama that you go through. And it was just marvelous. I mean, it's just to see them actually be able to, as seventh graders, make it their own. But I was careful not to go too far. I mean, people knew, the administration, everyone knew I was Baha'i, but it was like, it was wonderful to see them grow into their own understanding. But I'm sorry, I'm glad I didn't know some of these etymologies. Oh my goodness.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because religion in and of itself is a social construct.
Mm-hmm.
And by in a social construct, it is for domination and control. Heaven and hell are punishments, supposedly. But here's the thing. There's no heaven they could put you in and no hell they could take you out of. And vice versa. There's none. There is none. Which goes back to the question about the Black church and the people that's not protecting their rights, standing up. If somebody tells them they're going to hell, they will do everything not to catch that consequence, even if it's to their own detriment.
Mm-hmm.
So if you control the masses and say you're going to hell if you protest, or you go to hell because of this, they're not going to protest.
Or if you go to hell because you date a Black man or a Black, interracially dating, or, Tracy, I am curious, growing up in the Catholic Church, was your church, all white? Did you have any Black people attend masses? You need to unmute.
No, all white.
All white.
And then I moved to North Carolina, then I moved to South Carolina, then I came to Louisiana, all white. The first Black person I met was in school when I got to high school, because I went to a magnet school. So it was all like, you get IQ tested and that's how you kind of all get together. It's not based on your neighborhood.
Oh, and we can go into the racist history of IQ tests as well. I mean, yeah.
If we got time, we can go into that for sure. For sure. And see, the powers that be, they know the buttons to push. They know the people that's religious, the people that believe everything that comes from a preacher's mouth. And they use that to sow seeds of dissension, discord, and to keep the control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very successfully so for a couple thousand years now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Can y'all talk a little bit more about the book that that she was reading? Is it Stefan? Post-slave syndrome?
Post-traumatic slave syndrome. That's the September book discussion for the group.
Oh, okay.
So,
can you tell me just like a little bit what it is?
It's heavy. That's what
I've never heard of it.
So you know how like when you have like veterans or sex trauma survivors and they have post-traumatic syndrome? So this is the generational post-traumatic syndrome of the enslaved people. That's a nice, simple way to.
Okay.
To keep the generational mindset and curse going.
Yeah. To keep them enslaved. So like this month's book that we did, which there's still time to read it. It's only 25 pages. It's the Willie Lynch letters, How to Make an African-American Slave for 1,000 Years. And it ties in very much to what we're discussing today in regards to Christianity. You need to unmute Stefan, and then it kind of bleeds right into that post-traumatic slave syndrome. I'm trying to tie it all in together, a nice little flow.
Title and author again. Sorry, title and author again.
Lynch?
Oh, let me get his name up. I can never remember his name.
Before we came out here from Sacramento, we did a 10-month program with Dr. DeGroote. She lived in
Mm.
Sacramento. I mean, she's
Yeah.
a Baja, so it's like we didn't know we were moving out here. It's like the whole thing's been kind of okay.
Okay, so this is. Come on. By Delroy Constantine Sims. And this discussion is on Friday night at 7. You okay, Stefan?
So we'll have to figure something out. But on Friday at 7, we have our devotions here at our house. But something's going to have to be done about it.
Okay.
I think that'll be the first one I won't be at work,
Yay!
right?
That's why I want to try and switch them up. It just seems like Sunday, nobody has stuff going on Sunday evenings. Everybody's just at home chilling for work the next day. The reason why this one's on Friday is because I'm in training all next weekend. There's no way I could even have the capacity to to host a talk on that afterwards. My brain's fried after that.
And Stefan and Tracy, whatever you do, make time for when we have that Know Your Rights in September.
I've gotten a lot of my own private lectures from Olivia on that, but I'll also join you for that too.
Definitely worth getting into.
Actually, well, and next weekend is the healing led by Leslie. So we actually have a healing session next weekend on next Sunday at 6.
Talking about post-traumatic, I was thinking this is what you were going to say, the post-traumatic slavery syndrome. When I moved up to Maryland to go to graduate school, and as soon as they heard my accent, they didn't like me up there. Like any African Americans, they did not like me up there. And they didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to have anything to do with me. I thought kind of that's what you were talking about, just like the after effects of it all. But then once they got to know me, they thought I was the sweetest thing ever.
But
But
you are.
but I mean, they really like had a preconceived notion because I had a Southern accent.
Which
I,
Go ahead.
I was studying this group of people called,
Go ahead.
or learning about this group of people called GU 272, Georgetown University 272. In 1838, 272 enslaved people were sold by Jesuits in Maryland to Marygoin, Louisiana, like 30 minutes west of here, Baton Rouge. I wonder if there is like a connection, like that, like stories that were told, from generation to the next, and talking about their ancestors or friends or something, being sold to the South. Specific. I mean, they may not know exactly where, but to the South, I wonder if that's the cause of the antagonism.
So, part of the answer to that is within the last 3 years, a lot of people have been going hard on the profiteers of slavery. So I can guarantee you some people know the stories.
Yeah.
And before this year is over and before Agent Orange is out of there, it will probably be said, because people are cashing in, people are getting recognized, the universities are all getting shaken down by their ties to slavery and how they profited, because that was the economic engine for the foundation of this country.
Yes.
Between tobacco, cotton, yeah. So
If you look at the biggest, if you look at the top 1% of wealthy, you can trace it back to that slavery. Those who have reached that top 1% of wealth did not get there without it. It's a generational wealth that has been afforded to white people, not all white people, but a lot of white people, versus our Black counterparts.
And
Well, even
that's
just downtown Baton Rouge, the levees, you know, they were forced to, that's Black people forced to work for nothing. I think about it when I go down there, you know.
It's been an interesting year for us. We bought this house almost a couple years ago, but we got here last July, and this house sits in if you go to the dot racial map, it's all green. It's 100% Black. We got churches all around us. None of our neighbors go to those churches. But at first, there were burglar bars all on it. We ended up taking our bars down and stuff. We've had some comments. We met a lot of people, all Black. And finally, the next door neighbor came in one day because his son lost a phone. And he sat down and he said, you know what? I really didn't know. I thought you were either crazy or you had something else going on. But at this point, it's been a year, and it's amazing. But it's like, no, readily understood. No, I just hate white people because so it's like, yep. And I it's we got a long ways to go.
It's ingrained in like everything.
We have a local activist kind of guy that has started trying to do some things in our community here in Panama City, and he is trying to start a group of local leaders to kind of address some of these issues, not just race, but also some of the socioeconomic problems we've got going on. And he's Black, and he posted a thing on Facebook today about, you know, if anybody else wants to be a leader in our community and speak up, you know, let me know. I'll invite you to our first meeting. And I said, well, you know, and I've been chatting with him some on Messenger, so things that other people don't see. But I said, well, I'm just curious, do you intend this to be for Black people only? My intent being, as a white person, I don't want to start hijacking something that's a Black-led movement, right? And also I said, what part of town? Because we do have some really, like, you know, different parts of town have their own, they're very prideful because, and it's because they've been hurt, unfortunately, by other people trying to go in and kind of, it's the poorer parts of town and they don't want to be taken advantage of. So I just said that. And this woman comes back, this white woman, and my profile picture is just a rose, so you don't know what I am, you know? She comes back saying how racist I am that I asked if it's only for Black people. And I said, no, you misunderstood. Like, I'm a white person trying not to be racist. So like, I don't want to go in and be one of those white voices that's talking over the Black voices. That's why I asked. And we've gone back and forth a few times, and she just keeps saying, now she's saying that I'm a front leading other racists. I'm like, I don't understand. But obviously that's coming from some deep-seated ideas that we have in our town that he's trying to break down, is this idea that, you know, obviously if you're white, you must only fit in this box. And if you're Black, you only fit in this box. But I just found it really interesting. Like, and I just finally said, I'm like, you don't know who I am at all. Obviously, maybe you got me confused with some other Amy. Like, that's all I can think. But it was just bizarre the way she came back at me. And I found that interesting that, you know, you're talking about the neighborhoods and trying to like break down this idea that just because you're in a certain section of town, you have to fit this mold. And it just kind of struck me as odd that here he is trying to fix some of that. And on his own Facebook page, here's somebody just like going the complete opposite direction. It was really odd.
Very performative.
Stefan.
Yes.
Your wife's question about the slaves. And here's another thing about history. And I'm not talking about history, I'm talking about his story. In the beginning of where there's slaves, there weren't only Black slaves. There was Irish and different slaves. The difference is they were called indentured servants, and they eventually got their freedom.
And weren't treated nearly as bad.
and weren't treated nearly as bad. So the narrative in the beginning was, as long as you weren't Black, you had hope and whatever. So any Italians that came here, Irish, Polish, as long as you weren't Black, you had somebody above you. So the indentured service, if you look up that slaves that got traded from Maryland to Louisiana, you're going to find that all of them weren't Black.
So speaking on community service, especially Stefan, and how do you say your name, sweetheart?
Aki.
Aki. Okay, so Leslie and I are actually in the process of starting our own community work called the Soulshine Center for Racial Healing here in Baton Rouge. And so, and I want to kind of talk about this too, because one of the things that's really important is, even though we are a Black woman and a white woman coming together to bring healing to the communities, both Black and white, there's definitely going to be, and there is always a need to have a safe space for Black only people, because we are triggering, we are hurtful, we are racist, and we're working on it, right? So having those safe spaces for Black people, like some of the best Black Lives Matters groups I've seen, they'll have events that are open to everybody, and they'll have events that are Black only. So it's a Black safe space. And you know, there's nothing racist about that. I mean, because there's no oppression against me as a white person by having a safe Black space. And that's something that you could even mention to that person, that there's no oppression happening to anybody who's not Black, you know.
And a key, there's a prejudice, there's bias, and there's discrimination. And there's totally different levels on those. Everybody has a bias.
Mm-hmm.
That's just human nature. We can have a prejudice. That's human nature. If you don't know somebody, you might be prejudiced. But discrimination is the point where you use your prejudice to down somebody or keep somebody from getting what they need to get.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I took this class. I'm a student at LSU. I took this class called Psychology of Stereotyping from African American Studies. That's my first semester, 2 semesters ago. And I learned a lot about, you know, this like attitude and behavior, you know, prejudice is an attitude and behavior. I mean, discrimination is a behavior and manifestation of the attitude. So yeah, thank you for reiterating that. And
well, and there's something really important about what you're saying there too, in some of the things that we're trying to develop for Soulshine is, when you think about our behaviors are based on our belief systems, and our belief systems are based 95% based in non-reality. And that non-reality belief system comes from traumas through our childhood passed down to us. So with cognitive behavioral thinking, we can work on that cognitive distortion and start unlearning beliefs that are responsible for our behaviors. And since you're at LSU, I don't know if you are aware of Dr. Tina Harris. Okay, she's incredible. I work really closely with her. She is just one of the most amazing people. LSU created a whole position for her at the Manship Communication on racial healing through interracial relationships. You know, at some point she will be joining in on our group to help out. We're going to kind of help each other out in some ways. Hopefully we'll come and present the Know Your Rights there when school comes back together. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to make something really, well, I don't know if I have to like this, but.
I just emailed her yesterday.
So before we came out here, she didn't know where she was going to school. My wife's doing her doctorate in communication studies. Her master's was amazing anyways, but she had looked at these people at Georgia, Maryland, and LSU. And one of the people that she wanted to work with, well, in Georgia, there's this Dr. Harris. Anyway, so we're here and there's no one but white people in communication studies at LSU. And we go to the National Communication Association conference, and the last day on Sunday, too early for my wife to get up because she doesn't get up. She's an artist. She doesn't get up early if unless I'm, anyways. We go to the panel because it was like the most important part of the whole thing. And we're sitting there and we're like, okay, this is a beautiful panel, a little discussion. They introduce themselves, and then she says LSU, and we're both like, what? So she's in mass comm. And then we find out that LSU is segregated. So anyways, now she of course takes a class, and now she's like, oh my goodness, I want her as my advisor, but she's in a different, and how do we do this? So, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And of course you're connected to her too. This is weird.
Yeah. Oh, Tracy, they moved here just over a year ago from Sacramento, like me.
Y'all know each other before or no?
This feels like a confirmation to me.
She did it because I walked in this house and I was like, oh, this is the house we're buying. And then we bought it on her birthday. And then she applied 3 months later, she applied to the program. And then in April, she got in the program. We already owned the house. Kind of funny.
Why don't y'all go to the church in your neighborhood?
We're Baha'i. So there's a Baha'i center down on Perkins, and it's like yeah. So I do want to, though. I mean, there's even I don't know if it's still open, Seventh Day down here. There's a Baptist, there's an AME, there's
a church right across.
Yeah, so there's a bunch, and we will definitely be getting to know those neighbors too. But they're not actually neighbors. They come in, they park their nice cars, and then they leave.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's about white.
It's about white.
Sorry.
That's funny.
But our neighbors are amazing. Our neighbors are amazing. Oh my goodness. Anyways, Trevor comes over. If the door's not locked, he walks in, and we finally, our Friday night devotions. Last night we came up with the name Friendship Cafe. So I'm excited, but I know we'll have to take one Friday off at least for this book thing now. Oh my goodness.
But most of the time, most of the discussions are on Sunday. It's just this Friday is the only Friday one. Anything else, Antonio? What you got for us?
Pretty much it.
Pretty much it.
Pretty much it. And then it was just a bunch of feedback. I was going to see how everybody liked it and if they wanted to chime in or anything. Did I miss anything? Did Aki have any other questions I might be able to answer?
I have a lot of questions, but I don't know what questions to ask.
Hey, shoot them away.
So the whole reason we have these Zoom calls, of course, we'll pick a discussion topic, we'll pick a book, we'll pick a film, but it isn't necessarily talking about that specific thing. So even if it's not related, it is about having the talks.
The hard conversations.
So ask anything.
And here's the thing. You can ask the hard questions and we can disagree but not be disagreeable. So this is not you ask a question, I shoot your head off. No. You ask a question, we come to an understanding. You may not like the answer, but at least we can agree that it was brought up in discussion.
We don't have.
So we do not have to agree, but we do have to respect each other.
I need that shirt.
I got it from a great comedian named Miss Pat. She's awesome.
I'm going to have to find one.
I'll just say this. I grew up pretty sheltered and stuff, but, when I got to LSU, that all changed. But I'm glad that all the discussions have started. Like at our dinner table on Sunday nights now, it's, my parents, my husband's parents, my children, all ages, all three different generations talking about, how on earth did we never talk about, Black people and gay people? And, I have a niece now who says she's a boy and we're starting to call her, by a boy name, but just the differences in people and how that shall be respected. I mean, I feel like I taught them that, but not ever by talking directly about it. I would talk about my grandparents and how things were in Georgia and how horrific that was. And we would not ever be that way. And they'd never say the N-word and they'd never disrespect anybody. But we never really had any conversations about it. So, everything's
and that's
happening
the thing.
now.
We've gotten away from those dinner conversations. social media has made people less sociable.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
that's the thing. We do. We have dinner conversations every Sunday, but it was never about different people and how they should all be equal. You know?
Well, right now, America's all collectively is having the conversations as hard as they are. And this is over 400 years in the making.
Exactly.
When you talk about reparations, the Indians got it, the Japanese got it, everybody's got it. But the people who built the country actually, literally, since they didn't get paid for it, they're burning it to the ground, literally. And the thing is, corporate America doesn't care about the burning because they know they can fix that back.
Yeah.
So they understand this time everybody's having a conversation.
Yep. That's very good. I've enjoyed listening to you, Antonio.
I appreciate that.
He's great, isn't he?
Yes. Yes. Very interesting. Very
All right,
knowledgeable.
Miss Key, let's have some conversations, group conversations. What questions you got?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I originally came here to try to help close the gap between blacks and whites. And I'm Asian. I'm originally from Japan. And I'm finding where I fit, but I don't know yet. I'm trying. And I want to listen to both parties. You know, it's an in-group, out-group situation, right? And I think that many people, I do visual, so forgive me. I think that many people, like imagine two circles, right? White and brown, or pale and brown, right? And many people were comfortable being in the center of that circle, like social circle. And they weren't ready to come out to the periphery of the circle to have interaction with one another.
Comfort zone. Coming out of their comfort zone.
Yeah. And
You're not comfortable being uncomfortable.
Comfortable.
right. So I'm thinking that you know, it's the first step to kind of come out to the periphery so that they can blend their ideas and thoughts and experiences, right? So, and I've been listening to, I mean, I'm pursuing higher education. I have, you know, bought into this ideology of pursuing higher education, which is made by white men, for white men. So I have to perform in a way that white men would have historically, you know, shown their knowledge.
No, you have to go surpass that.
Right.
You have to surpass that as not just a woman, but a non-white woman. You have to surpass every level of a white man.
And English is not my first language, so I have to not make any mistakes, because when a native English speaker makes a small mistake, it's a whoopsie mistake, but it becomes a big mistake if I made the same mistake. And I think that, you know, it doesn't have to be a language thing. I know that like some of my, you know, African American friends, especially female friends, would agree with me that small mistakes become so big for them. But anyway,
The first thing I can say is, to thy own self be true. So when you show your true self and you don't try to pretend to be something else, people see genuality. They see genuine people. And by you and your culture, Japanese are known to be not subservient, but submissive in the women. So when you come over here, it flips on its head. They treat the women less than women. That's why Kamala's catching hell right now. So you, as long as you bring what you bring, your credentials, your authenticity, it's going to shine in the end. Because quiet as it's kept, the baby boomers are dying out. The power people that's racist, their kids are breeding out. So racism is being bred out and they're dying out. So you do you, And then eventually you're going to be where you need to be, because women are definitely going to be coming up and they're going to be staying up for a while. The glass ceiling is about to be shattered. So young girls, they're going to see that it's possible to be a president. And if Kamala plays this right, Biden has to live just 2 years and a day. And then after that, she can technically run the rest of his term, 2 years, and then run for 2 4-year terms. So technically she could be in there for 10 years if they play it right.
Wow.
Oh, he has to laugh. Oh no.
Okay.
I was hoping for quick.
So
Aki, let's definitely make sure that we could connect. You could potentially have a place at the Soulshine Center. You know, it sounds like it aligns very much with what we're trying to do. We don't want to just offer healing sessions to people in the communities, but we want to offer courses on anti-racism, and we're going to be developing our own courses. You know, there is nothing in Baton Rouge that does that. You can go down to New Orleans to the People's Institute and take classes down there. Well, you could pre-COVID, but there's nothing here like that in Baton Rouge. So we want to have healing services. We're going to have education on food, because that's super huge. There is food. There's some great documentaries about the food desert in Black communities. So, you know, we want to teach about healthy food and healthy eating and how to garden and create your own food wealth within your communities and feeding each other. You know, so I'm sure that there's probably a spot for you here with us.
You know Oak Park in Sacramento?
Yeah, I used to live in Oak Park.
That's where we live. And we used to farm in our backyard.
Wait a second.
Organic farm.
You know Joni?
Well, not personally. Followed on Facebook though.
Dude, okay, she's like, I'm sorry. Me and Joan, her mom, go back for the early 90s. So anyway.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
So I already, I liked it. I'm following Assisi House and now Soulshine Center for Racial Healing. I don't know. I'll look you up, I guess. And,
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to do is move into a Black community and build a community garden, like, because in the front yard, and start getting the neighbors to.
Yes,
that's what we're doing.
Let me know. I'll come over because I don't have my own house yet. So.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Antonio.
Okay.
It's all Antonio's fault.
Also, you need to follow Baton Roots. So Baton Roots has urban agricultural certification courses.
Ooh.
And they teach marginalized communities how to urban garden. And so they have some amazing classes and get-togethers and things like that here in Baton Rouge. And they also deliver vegetable boxes and stuff. So
we've been up there. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Nice.
Wow.
Woo.
What else you got, Aki? Yes,
you don't even, please. She's got something called Saison d'être, which is there are 4 books, 1 for each season. She won't talk about it. That's why I do this. Like, I'm promote. Okay. And it's her master's thesis, but it comes with a teacher's guide, how to they're picture books, no words. And it's understanding the need for diversity. It's all through nature. And every season has the protagonist and antagonist. And it's all about how acres of almond trees are not a good idea. And so then the teacher guide has activities and whatever, and it's all around diversity. So it's just, I mean, that thing there, I'm thinking, oh, we can retire now. Let's, unless you want to get a doctorate.
It's about diversity, but, keep in mind this like Black and white divide, because my position is that this, issue, this gulf is so vast that if this can somehow be repaired and healed, people like me would fall into places. So that's why I'm focusing on this Black and white divide. But I feel like I'm very comfortable living in white space. I mean, I'm married to a white man, Now I'm learning different ways that, I don't know, different, I'm developing appreciation for things that I didn't know before. Like different ways of knowing, like I was talking about, like, white people's way of knowing and proving that we know stuff. But there are different ways of knowing, like experiences, like sixth sense, and all these other ways, you know, artistical, is that a word?
It is now.
Artistic rendition of something to show that they know something, you know, or storytelling, you know.
Yeah,
So
narrative.
yeah, so
Narrative medicine.
Yes.
and I feel like it's my responsibility to learn the history of the United States before I go and hurt some African American people. So I'm doing that. And we are becoming more friends with, you know, people we, you know, I don't know, we have all kinds of friends, but yeah, so I'm kind of interested in how gatherings like this can unfold itself. You know, I'm not here to like preach or anything, you know. I have my I carry this thing around that goes, also no spirit, noble have I created thee. And that's God speaking. So that's for everybody, that's including me.
Kings
And
queens.
everybody, you know. So I'm I don't know, I lost the train of my thought, but
You're at the station.
Keep showing up. That's how.
That's
so,
it.
so yeah, so
So keep showing up, and then when we have events, invite people.
Yes.
Come to the group, invite people to the group,
Mhm.
so we can have these events. And then
And I'll send you the link to our actual group that holds the discussions.
Awesome.
And please, you know, like you said, come to the discussions, invite people to the discussions, invite them to the group, because the more we can the more participation we can get, we're planting seeds that are going to grow and have branches and create shade and spread out to other people.
Yep. Yep.
Be that drop in the water that ripples out.
because Rome wasn't built in a day, so this is a process. This
A
is
lifelong.
an ongoing process.
Yeah, generations.
And we don't have all the answers, but what we do have is discussions and dialogue.
Yeah. That's great.
Good stuff.
I guess I have a question for you, Antonio.
Okay.
I know that things have been moving so slowly, but you seem to have hope. Where do you get that?
I got 4 daughters. My youngest is going to turn 21 in 3 days. And I'm thinking by the time they're kids, whenever they decide to have kids, some of this stuff would have been neutralized. Because again, the old racists and the people that control the racist rhetoric, they're dying out. And their kids are having biracial kids. So they're not going to be able to say I'm racist and have biracial kids. So
But they could behave that way.
Right. So that's what I'm holding hope out for.
Right.
Because what we see right now, this whole last 4 years has been nothing but the art of misdirection.
Oh yeah.
They've been doing nothing. This is like a magician show. You're looking at the left hand and the right hand is doing all the dirt.
Look over here, look over here.
Exactly. So the racial stuff, all the crazy stuff, this is all because they're stealing money, and they know they're stealing money and they're trying to get away with it. So this racial stuff that's going on, that's to keep them from being seen on what they're really doing. This whole thing is a plandemic, not pandemic.
Right.
And the only way to set everything straight was to make sure everybody was staying in place. Because they knew about this back in 16, 17. So that's why I hold out hope for.
Yeah, I'm just amazed about this year, this whole year I just feel like I felt the Creator having everyone stop, slow down, meditate. Here we'll call it COVID-19. Everyone get
it's called reboot. Like you'll
might. And then I'm sorry, but George Perry Floyd. I mean, oh my goodness, just amazing. And here we are, inspired. And I'm sorry, internationally, the biggest thing ever, and like the head of NAACP in Nashville going, okay, I've never seen anything so diverse. This is like amazing, and it's just it's a beautiful thing, and it's not done.
Well,
Far
it's
over.
a beautiful thing, and I'm already starting to see the same trend that happens every time we see a Black man murdered by cop, and that's white people starting to disappear from the fight and the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless you're in Portland,
Oh my God.
because it's all white here pretty much. I mean, Portland is the whitest city in the, whitest large city in the US, and protests day and night.
Yeah.
Portland, y'all doing it up there.
We are doing it.
Oh wait.
Mhm.
Portland?
I'm in Portland, yeah.
Oh wow.
Well, I'm currently in Newburgh, which is about 35 minutes outside of Portland. That's where I work.
Yeah.
Which just a minute ago I saw a truck with the flags. It doesn't take very long to get into the country from Portland, and that's definitely where I'm at.
Wow.
It's totally different worlds.
Oregon has a very, very racist history.
And we had no idea.
It was the one state that in its constitution said nobody but white folks could come in here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Literally.
I had no idea
Until they needed Black people to do the labor.
Yes.
Right.
And then they could only go to one town that they
Right.
flooded.
Yes, and that was Vanport.
Yeah.
Yes. And they didn't flood it. They just didn't stop the flood from happening. They built it on a flood plain, knew a flood was going to happen, and just said, and let it happen.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
When Dr. Joy moved to Sacramento, she moved down from Portland. And I didn't know. I thought Portland was cool. I mean, they have buses and everything. Boy, we learned a lot.
Yep. Portland's pretty hip, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it still has some really, really deep racist roots. Not as much as you get further out, right? Hence the reason all those protests are so isolated in Portland. And as you get further out, the other protests would be the Back the Blue and that sort of stuff. Those are the protests further out.
Okay.
But in Portland, it's Black Lives Matter, and it's bigger groups of Black Lives Matter people and smaller groups of the counter protesters.
Yeah.
Wow. That bring their guns and their bear mace, which is illegal, and you're not supposed to bear mace humans, but they do it anyways.
Oh.
Yeah. My son and his girlfriend live 4 blocks from the Justice Center.
Oh, wow.
And and she goes to the protests. And yesterday she went down there, and because there was a Proud Boys protest going on for Back the Blue, and so she went down there to counter protest it with a bunch of people. And as the Proud Boys were leaving, I just call them Proud Boys, but they weren't all just Proud Boys. As they were leaving, even though the group was following them from a fair distance, but still making sure they leave, they turned and bear maced everybody. And then they went up into the parking garage, and from a couple stories up in the parking garage started shooting plastic pellet paintball guns down on the group. She went and told the cop live. She was on Facebook Live streaming this, went to a police officer and in his car and said, these people are bear macing and shooting from up above plastic pellets at people. And he looked at her and he said, there's only 2 of us on duty. There's nothing I can do. In downtown Portland, and drove off. And then she walked back. He was a block away. She walked back, and they drove out of the garage and shot their gun, actual live ammunition.
Yeah.
Wow.
In the city of Portland, right in downtown.
That was last night?
That was yesterday morning.
Yesterday morning, okay.
Is that a gun in the air, or did it hit someone?
It didn't, as far as we know, it didn't hit anybody, but he definitely wasn't aiming it up.
Oh.
Oh, wow. Okay, of course.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's not the first incident like that. It happens all the time.
Baton Rouge did recently have a Blue Pride Day. And they had, the little cop rally going on, and our
Wait,
chief
I'm sorry, are Smurfs in danger?
apparently,
That's what I want to know.
right? And
Blue lives
our chief of police here in Baton Rouge is a black man, and our mayor is a black woman, and of course, neither of them were in attendance.
Yeah.
Our chief of police is a black man.
They do that strategically and purposely.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. They're the fall people. If they do a good job, they'll be attaboy. If not, they give them all the blame.
Yep.
The Seattle chief of police, she quit when she found out they were going to defund. And instead of reframing the narrative saying they're going to reallocate things, she kept the defund in there. So.
Yeah, Louisiana did not pass that bill to
reallocate funds.
Yeah, they did not pass that bill.
Yeah, I really wish they would use the term reallocate instead of defund.
Yeah.
It would go over better. I can't tell you how many times, because I watch the live streams almost nightly, and I can't tell you how many times I have to explain what defund means versus, not giving them any money whatsoever. They're just like, oh, so who are you going to call then? It's like, well, when it's a crime, we'll actually call the police. And when it's a mental health issue, we'll have a different number to call. And they've already got that all set up. Like, they've been doing it in Eugene for 25 years. They have a program called Cahoots that they have been using in Eugene for mental health crisis.
Not that complicated, people.
It isn't. It isn't.
Noise ordinance?
No.
And our police do not need to be militarized, period.
No, they don't.
Period.
Nope. 100% agree with you.
And a key. What I love about Japanese culture is you guys have a serenity about the culture. It's just like, no matter what's going on, you guys find a center of Zen.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Right. So that being said, that should be your hope too, because your culture teaches peace and center.
So
over here it's brash.
Where's that emoji with the?
I mean, okay. So yeah, she came over when she was 19. And I started indoctrinating her when she was 24. And I don't know what she saw in me, and she didn't. But I knew so. It was something. I don't know what this person was. It just, I met her. I was doing my bachelor's. She was doing her bachelor's, but I had 20 years on her. And it's like, I just knew, wow, what is going on here? And all of a sudden, all this has happened. And here we are. And now I'm just sitting in the back seat. Wow, which way are we going? So. I don't know. Yeah.
Sounds like a grand adventure.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
Never ending. Love it.
Love it. Love it.
No, here we go again now. Now I got the theme in my head. Thanks a lot, Antonia. First and only time I saw that was on the beach at Santa Cruz.
Really?
Yeah.
That was the first time.
I had never seen it before.
No, I saw it in Japan.
In Japan.
Yeah.
Okay. This is awesome.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, Antonio, so much for leading us so beautifully.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity.
Hey, any of them you want to do, you just let me know.
To learn, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for coming in, and thanks again for open dialogue.
Yeah. Thank you all for showing up. And I sent you guys, well, at least Stefan, I of course already had your information. I sent you a friend request, sent you the link to the White Support for the Black Cause. So hook me up with your wife too, please.
Oh, yeah.
Not on Facebook,
She's
but
not on Facebook.
Good woman.
She's on Pinterest. No, I don't think we'd survive, because I'm on Facebook and people say, oh, you love Facebook. Well, I'm saying, well, I was engaged with this one gentleman who is natively here, but he's from here, and he was saying some stuff, and so I just backed him down, and it turned out very positive. Sometimes if you say it right and use love, they actually go, and he had the first slave owner was black, and I said, well, actually, that's been shared, and it's misleading, and here actually is and he thanked me, and it was just like, oh, wow, that was nice. So, but I've got to stop.
No, don't stop. That's the
Don't stop.
Don't stop. Okay, and especially because, listen, the truth of the fact is you are a white man, and you have a privilege to speak to other white men who will listen to you.
That's exactly.
They will not listen to me. They will not listen to Heather. They will not listen to Antonio. They will not listen to Aki. They will listen to you.
Yeah.
So please don't stop, ever.
No, I'm afraid I can't. I won't. And that's why I know I'm here. It's just amazing.
Well, we need you.
And Stefan, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I always think of 6 degrees of separation.
Right.
You never know, who knows them, who you're talking to, because that ripple can be life changing.
It's amazing. I worked for 6 weeks at the Mayfair Laboratory School, and I don't know. It's just a school here in Baton Rouge. I don't know these people except for they're 100% female, and I was the one man. So supposedly I brought diversity when I met with the principal. I thought it was kind of funny, but anyways, now I'm friends with at least 9 or 10 of them on Facebook, and almost to a person, their banners on Facebook now are Black Lives Matter, and I'm like, wow, I had no idea. It's really awesome. And some of them are, it's funny, I'm connected through some of them as we have a common friend who's up in Zachary. And it's like you say, 6 degrees. It's really interesting when you start seeing people like, wow, okay, we have that friend in common. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all so much for showing up and being authentic. And I am so excited to meet you, Stefan, and Akeem. We are definitely going to connect here locally for sure.
Right?
Thank you.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. Right? Absolutely.
Love.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Now I go, Meredith.